Good morning everyone, we are the group 2. These are the topics that we will discuss.
For the history of Gothic art, Gothic art was a style of medieval art that developed in northern France out of Romanesque art in the 12th century AD, led by the concurrent development of Gothic architecture. It spread to all of Western Europe and much of northern, southern, and central Europe, never quite effacing more the classical style in Italy. So we can see some examples of Gothic architecture here, such as Chartres Cathedral, 1194 to 1250. So we can see the style of architecture from the cathedral, which is common to the next example, such as Notre Dame Cathedral, Paris, in 1163 to 1345. We can see the similarities of both cathedrals. Also to the third cathedral. So for early Gothic, we can see the usage of more realistic patterns and more realistic usage of the sculpture. We can see that in each sculpture, for example, the first sculpture shown, the Reims Cathedral, the Apostle sculpture, we can see the detail used and the Christian influence of the sculpture. Also the next one, Saints, we can see the detail, everything. We can see everything, the usage of the detail, the detailing of the clothes to have a more Christian or Catholic influence to the art. So we can see to the other two, so such as the Visitation in Reims Cathedral, the angel. As you can see the influence really, all about the influence of Catholic religion to art. So it can not only be to the sculpture but also to the art. So also the other, as you can see, it's all really in the influence of a more realistic depiction of Catholical sculpture and art.
High Gothic. The second phase of Gothic architecture began with a subdivision of the style known as Rionant on the continent and as the decorated Gothic style in England. This style was characterized by the application of increasingly elaborate geometrical decoration to the structural forms that had been established during the preceding century. So what is the Rionant style? The Rionant is a French building style in the 13th century that represents the height of Gothic architecture. During this period, architects became less interested in achieving great size than in decoration, which took such forms as pinnacles, moldings, and especially window tracery. The radiating rays of light that streamed through the glass gave the movement its name. During the period of the Rionant style, a significant change took place in Gothic architecture. Until about 1250, Gothic architects concentrated on the harmonious distribution of masses of masonry, and particularly in France, on the technical problems of achieving great height. Another typical feature of Rionant architecture is the thinning of vertical supporting members, the enlargement of windows, and the combination of the triforium gallery and the clerestory until walls are largely undifferentiated screens of tracery, mullions, and glass. Stained glass, formerly deeply colored, became lighter in color to increase the visibility of tracery silhouettes and to let more light into the interior. Here are some of the cathedral examples. The first one is the Cathedral of Reims. Second is the Cathedral of Chartres. The parallel decorated Gothic style came into being in England with the general use of elaborate stone window tracery, supplanting the small, slender, pointed lancet windows of the early English Gothic style were windows of great width and height. Examples of these are the sections of the Cloister of Westminster and the Angel Choir of York Minster. Now let's move on to another topic, the late Gothic. In France, the Renaissance style evolved about 1280 into an even more decorative phase called the Flamboyant style, which evolved out of the Renaissance style's increasing emphasis on decoration. In England, a development known as the Perpendicular style lasted from about 1375 to 1500s. The most conspicuous feature of the Flamboyant Gothic style is the dominance in stone window tracery of a flame-like S-shaped curve. In the Flamboyant style, wall space was reduced to the minimum, supporting vertical shafts to allow an almost continuous expanse of glass and tracery. By the late Gothic period, greater attention was being given to secular buildings. Thus, Flamboyant Gothic features can be seen in many town halls, guild halls, and even residences. There were few churches built completely in the Flamboyant style. Flamboyant Gothic, which eventually became overly ornate, refined, and complicated, gave way in France to Renaissance forms in the 16th century. Here is an example of the cathedral for Notre Dame de Pin, which have a late Gothic style. In England, the parallel perpendicular Gothic style was characterized by a predominance of vertical lines in the stone tracery of windows, an enlargement of windows to great proportions, and the conversion of the interior stories into a single unified vertical expanse. Example of this is the Gloucester Cathedral.
During the medieval period, also referred to as the late Middle Ages, there was a notable transformation in artistic style and craftsmanship. Gothic art emerged during this era and brought about significant advancement in artistry. Many artists during this time rejected the traditional influences of Romanesque and Byzantine art and began exploring new approaches to art. As Gothic art evolved, it gradually shifted towards a more natural and secular style that eventually became known as the International Gothic by the 14th century. The Gothic movement played a crucial role in promoting realism in art, which later paved the way for the Renaissance art style. Gothic artists specialized in four main types of art, which included the stained glass, manuscript, illumination, frescoes, and painting panels. These art forms reflected the diverse range of creative expression that was hallmark of the medieval era. Let's proceed now to the famous Gothic artists. First, the master of Franciscan crucifixes, 13th century. The master of Franciscan crucifixes was an important figure in the world of art during the medieval period. This Italian artist, who was active in the 13th century, was known for creating works that were deeply religious and imbued with symbolism. The artist's work was primarily focused on depictions of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which was a central theme in Christian art during this time. The Master of Franciscan Crucifixes was part of a larger movement in medieval art that emphasized realism and a more naturalistic style. That artistic shift was departure from the stylized and abstract art of the Byzantine and the Romanesque periods that preceded it. The artist's work, alongside that of other contemporary artists, contributed significantly to the evolution of art in the medieval era and played a crucial role in shaping the artistic landscape of the following Renaissance period. Second is Benedetto Antilami. He was a prominent artist, architect, and designer in medieval Italy. He lived and worked during the late 12th century, and his contributions to art were diverse and extensive. Antilami's sculptures were particularly noteworthy as they often depicted religious themes with a high degree of technical skill and attention to detail. His sculptures were also notable for their realistic portrayal of the human form. Besides his work as a sculptor, Antilami was also involved in architectural design, particularly in construction of religious buildings such as churches. His influence in this area is still evident today in the many examples of Romanesque architecture in Italy. Overall, Benedetto Antillame's artistic legacy served as a testament to rich and diverse artistic culture in medieval Italy, which had profound impact on the development of art in Europe and beyond. Third is Bonaventure Berlinghieri. He was a prominent painter in medieval Italy, known for his work that were inspired by the religious culture of his time. He lived and worked in the early 13th century, which was a time of transformation for Italian art. Berlinghieri's art was characterized by its simplicity and restraint, which was reflective of the religious ideals of this era. He was particularly known for his work that depicted religious themes. His art was widely influential during his lifetime, and it helped to shape the artistic landscape of Italy during the medieval period. Berlinghieri's artistic legacy continued to inspire painters and art lovers long after his death, and his contributions to art of painting in medieval Italy serve as a testament to rich artistic culture of the era. Overall, his art played an important role in the development of art in Europe and beyond. Now let's proceed to the medieval Gothic art. It became popular about 500 years after the emergence of Gothic sculptures and architecture. The shift from Romanesque style to Gothic was not a clear or well-defined transition, and early Gothic paintings did not show significant changes in composition or figures. However, as the Gothic paintings developed, figures in the images become more dynamic in their facial expression and poses. They also tended to be depicted in similar proportions compared to the background scenes. This marked a departure from the Romanesque style and helped to define the unique characteristics of Gothic art. An example of Gothic painting is the Eisenheim altarpiece by Matthias Grunwald. The decline of the Gothic art, which was prevalent in Europe from 12th to 15th century, featured pointed arches, brave vaults, and flying buttresses in architecture, and elaborate the ornamentation and religious themes in sculpture and painting. The decline of the Gothic art is often attributed to the emergence of the Renaissance style in the 14th and 15th centuries, which emphasized the classical forms and humanistic values. The Renaissance challenged the religious and intellectual foundation of the Gothic style, leading to a shift in artistic priorities and aesthetic ideals. Additionally, political and economic factors such as the Hundred Years' Wars and the Black Death contributed to a decline in artistic production and patronage in the late Gothic period. However, it's important to note that the decline of the Gothic art was gradual and partial, and elements of the Gothic style continued to influence art and architecture in the centuries that followed, with the Gothic architecture remaining popular in Northern Europe well into the 16th century, and Gothic motifs continuing to be used in art and decoration during the Renaissance and Baroque periods. Gothic art, popular in Europe from 12th to 15th century, declined due to the emergence of Renaissance art, which challenged its religious and intellectual foundations. Economic and political factors also contributed. However, again, Gothic elements continued to influence art and architecture for centuries after.
Introduction of Romanesque art. Romanesque architecture is based on Roman architecture. The round Roman arch is the most obvious inspiration for this style. The ruins of Roman aqueduct and buildings are everywhere in the former Roman Empire. Most of this building has arches. You might think that the two words are related because of the origin. In 18 CE, Charles the Great became the Holy Roman Emperor, and Europe emerged from the Dark Age, since Roman fell. Roman ruins were scattered across the continent, and tales of the great empire were passed down. When Charles the Great wanted to unite his empire and prove his right to rule, He built churches in the Roman style, especially in the style of Constantine I's Christian Roman Empire. Romanesque art, architecture, sculpture, and paintings are characteristic of the first of two great international artistic era that flourished in Europe during the Middle Age. Romanesque architecture emerged about 1000 and lasts until about 1150, by which time it has evolved into Gothic. The Romanesque was at its height between 1075 and 1125 in France, Italy, British, and German lands. The name Romanesque refers to the fusion of Roman, Carolingine, and Ottonian and Byzantine, and the local Germanic traditions that make up the mature style. Although, perhaps the most striking advances of Romanesque art were made in France. The style was current in all parts of Europe except those areas in Eastern Europe that preserved a full-fledged Byzantine traditions. Its geographic distribution resulted in a wide variety of local types.
So the Middle Ages are often viewed as a time stagnation and backwardness. This view is largely due to the fact that there was a lack of technological advances and growth in scientific knowledge. Despite this period was still a great time progress in many areas. It saw the establishment of universities, monasteries, and religious orders, and the flourishing of literature, art. So the Renaissance was a period of great cultural and artistic achievements in Europe from the 14th to 16th centuries. Characterized by an increased awareness of nature, a revival of classical learning, the Renaissance in Florence is defined by the emergence of a new sense of humanism, where the individual was celebrated and the collective was less important than the sum of its parts. This was in the stark contrast to the Middle Ages, where the collective was more important than the individual. Florence was the epicenter of this new age of humanism, with individuals such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Dante Alighieri all leading the way in their creativities, and ideas. This new way of thinking was to have a huge impact on European culture, with the new art, forms, and styles of writing emerging during this period. So the High Renaissance period is traditionally taken to begin in the 1490s, with Leonardo's fresco of the Last Supper in Milan, and to end in 1527 with the sack of Rome by the troops of Charles. So Mannerism is an artistic style that emerged from the later years of the 16th century and lasted as a popular aesthetic style in Italy until about 1580.
What is Renaissance art? Renaissance art is a marked gradual shift from a form of the medieval period to the representational forms of the 15th century. Subjects from it grew mostly from biblical scenes, so it includes portraits, episodes from classical religions, and events from contemporary lives. The Renaissance was a fervent period of a European culture, artistics, politics, economics, and rebirth following the Middle Ages. It is generally described as from taking place for the 14th century to the 7th century. The Renaissance was then promoted by the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and arts. The Renaissance moves to north. During the late 1400s, the Renaissance ideas began to spread north from Italy to countries such as France, Germany, Spain, and England. This was due to particular cultural interactions, the growth of towns, and support from the region's powerful rulers. Eventually, the growth of cities across the northern Europe aided the spread of the Renaissance. In 1453, the destructive Hundred Years' War between England and France ended. Michelangelo Buonarroti's painting, The Creation of Adam, is a fresco painting by an Italian artist, Michelangelo. The Creation of Adam forms part of Sistine Chapel's ceiling, painted in the period between 1508 and 1512. It illustrates the biblical creation narrative from the book of Genesis, in which God gives life to Adam, the first man of humankind. One of the most famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci is the Mona Lisa. An Italian artist, Leonardo da Vinci, painted the half-length portrait Mona Lisa, considered an archetypal masterpiece of the Italian Renaissance. It has been described as the best-known work of art in the world. The painting's worship qualities includes the subject's enigmatic expressions, the subtlety of the tones, and the atmospheric depth of light. The painting is most probably of the Italian noble woman Lisa Gherardini, the wife of Francisco del Giocondo.